It is not banning TikTok. It just changes ownership from Chinese Communist Party connected to something in the United States. Let's play Thomas Massey's perspective here. He's against it. Let's play cut 68, please.
But there's some of us who feel that either intentionally or unintentionally, this legislation to ban TikTok is actually a Trojan horse. Some of us are concerned that there are First Amendment implications here. Americans have the right to view information. We don't need to be protected by the government from information. Some of us just don't want the president picking which apps we can put on our phones or which websites that we can visit. We don't think that's appropriate. We also think it's dangerous to give the president that kind of power, to give him the power to decide what Americans can see on their phones and their computers.
Do we want Joe Biden to have that kind of power? Do we want the Biden White House to be able to pick and choose? I've grown skeptical of all of these sort of legislative efforts recently. Thomas Massey continues, play cut 69.
Now, people say that this TikTok ban will only apply to TikTok or maybe another company that pops up just like TikTok, but the bill is written so broadly that the president could abuse that discretion and include other companies that aren't just social media companies.
So the question is it written that broadly? The proponents of the bill say, no, don't worry, just trust us. And under normal circumstances, I would, but the power you give the regime is power abused. And good people are split on this. Steve Bannon is very supportive of this piece of legislation. Tucker Carlson is very opposed to this piece of legislation. And I am not a fan of TikTok. If it could just be sign a piece of paper, no more TikTok, go away forever, sign me up for that program. But it's not about winning or losing on TikTok. It's about something far deeper than this. It's about what power are we willing to give the executive branch of government? And has the executive branch of government, has the administrative state, has this quiet dictatorship, this fourth branch of government that exists in our country, have they earned our trust? If we don't trust the FBI, we don't trust the CIA, we don't trust the Department of Justice, do we think that whatever law, whatever rules, whatever measures are put into this piece of legislation, is it going to be followed completely, or are they going to go after Rumble or even threaten Elon Musk with this piece of legislation? Thomas Massey finishes his argument. Let's play cut 70, please.
There were some people who were legitimately concerned that this was an overly broad bill, and they got an exclusion written into the bill that I want to read. It says the term covered company does not include an entity that operates a website or application whose primary purpose is to allow users to post product reviews, business reviews, or travel information and reviews. Why is this exception in the bill? Why did somebody feel like they needed this exception if the bill itself only covers social media applications that foreign adversaries are running?
So one of the proponents, one of the people that's pro-legislation says this: the law would require a fairly holistic review to put another company off the list. The general enforcement investigation would come from the Attorney General's office for civil penalties. But that's after the app has been designated by the White House via an interagency process. In order, for example, Telegram to be even considered, you have to show, one, that it's owned by an entity owned by an adversarial government, okay, Russia, or is a subsidiary of that company, and that government has control over the app. Okay, Telegram is much different than TikTok in that regard. Sure, it's owned by a Russian company, but it's not controlled by Putin. Okay, but is TikTok controlled by Xi? I guess that's the argument. Whereas ByteDance literally has a member of the Chinese Communist Party stationed in its boardroom to align itself with Chinese Communist Party priorities. Telegram's a harder case. I mean, the Russian government literally blocked users from it pushing anti-Russian sentiments. Okay. But it seems as if this is the formula in recent political times. We see an issue, we react to it, and we get less freedom and liberty. That is the equation every single time. Would this be different? I don't know. I see good arguments on both sides. I don't want TikTok to have an uninterrupted superhighway into the minds of the future of America. Raheem, what do you have to say to the people that will say, but it doesn't ban it, it just makes an American company buy it, so this will potentially be owned by Google or Facebook?
Yeah, well, I think that's far better than it being owned by the Chinese Communist Party for a start. But I also think that there are other options here. I mean, I saw that Rumble yesterday put out a statement and said, look, they are happy to join a consortium, specifically as a cloud hosting partner in a takeover. And that is something that the bill addresses, right? It's talking about divestiture or sale. And it would be 180 days after the bill passes that this would have to happen by. So it doesn't even necessarily impact this coming presidential election. Let's say if the Senate gets to it in a month and then it goes to Biden's desk, I mean, it takes you up until after the election to actually have anything like that happen. Yeah, look, there will be American companies champing at the bit to try and get their hands on something like this. It's an incredibly powerful platform. But at the same time, American companies will also have American oversight already written into American law via your legislative branch. And if there were to be any overstep, any overstretch, especially on a bill like this, I would imagine this current Supreme Court especially would have no problem jumping in and saying, hold on a second, guys, this is not what the bill says. This is not what you're allowed to do. So I think, President Trump had some wonderful Supreme Court picks. I would expect them to uphold the rule of law when it comes to something like this. But what is the alternative here, Charlie? To continue to allow the Chinese Communist Party via ByteDance to impact America, impact your elections, foist the pandemic upon you, drill narratives into young Americans' heads that, by the way, they're not doing that with the Chinese version of TikTok. You don't see the degenerate content that you see in America on the Chinese version of TikTok. This is a foreign power tool that is being used by a foreign adversary. And let's be clear about this, by the way, as well. We're not talking about an allied nation. We're not talking about a European nation. This bill would never exist. This is literally the first line of this bill says to protect the national security of the United States from the threat posed by foreign adversary-controlled applications. I think it hits the nail on the head. I'm very interested in people reading this for themselves rather than like having little chunks that they see on people's Twitter feeds. It's imperative for citizen stakeholders to do that. It's 12 pages. Go and read it. So, Raheem, our audience is confused about one thing, and we're getting lots of emails, freedom@charliekirk.com. President Trump is against this piece of legislation. He was once in favor of banning TikTok. Help me understand. I don't want to speak out of turn, but look, the way it's been described to me is that there is a lot of money on the table. There's a lot of Club for Growth cash on the table, and one of the people who is funding the Club for Growth in a massive way at the moment is Jeff Yass. Jeff Yass is hugely invested in TikTok. So the campaign needs cash. I mean, it needs a lot of cash. And this is, again, I don't want to make it seem like there is a pay for play going on here, but this is politics. This is the kind of compromise that politicians and campaigns and candidates often have to make. I'm not sure, by the way, that President Trump is fully sold on the position of opposing the ban. I know he sent some tweets about it, or truths about it, last week. But I'm also hearing at the same time that he's not completely sold on the idea that this is what he wants to do, and that those truths were kind of him gauging the reaction to this from his own base, as he often does, by the way. So I would say, and people can take me to the cleaners on this if they want to, if it doesn't happen, I would say that we are going to experience a further nuancing of President Trump's positions in the next week over this. That is what I am told. That is what I expect. Where do you think the base is on this? Because Congress is acting as if there's massive majority support. Where do you think the base is at with this? I think torn, honestly, and fairly so. It's the way this bill has been kind of broadcast, and the way that the TikTok lobbyists have thrown cash at this to try and confuse the issue. It's no surprise to me that members of the ordinary public are confused over this. This is why I did an explainer video that is available on Getter, on Truth, on X, on Instagram, not on TikTok, that I published this morning, to walk people through it and say, look, I know what you're hearing. That's not in the bill. I thought it was really disingenuous what Elon Musk tweeted about the other day. He has his own Chinese business interests, by the way. And so the only thing I can say to people is bother to get down into the nitty gritty for yourselves.